Hi, ArcfieldWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Wednesday morning, October 23rd. I'd like to focus in on the tropical scene across the Atlantic Basin, and we'll also take a quick look in the Pacific Ocean as well. It does appear as if we'll go through a relatively calm period over the next several days, but as we get to the end of the month of October, which is at the end of next week, and into the first half of November, it looks to me like activity will have a surge again in places like the Gulf of Mexico, the Caribbean Sea, maybe the southwestern Atlantic Ocean as well. We've talked about the Madden-Julian oscillation. This is kind of a metric that meteorologists use to track a tropical disturbance that rotates around the global tropics on a regular basis, and it is going to move into a position that will lead to enhanced upward motion over the Atlantic Basin beginning late next week and then extending into the first half of the month of November. That should result in an uptick in tropical activity even into the middle part of November. Right now, nothing on the tropical scene in the Atlantic Basin, but we shift to the Pacific Ocean right here, and we notice there is indeed a hurricane, Hurricane Christy. May very well, by the way, have been the remnants of Nadine, which crossed over Central America and then into the Pacific Ocean. It gets renamed if it does make a move like that from the Atlantic Basin to the Pacific. So Nadine crossed Central America and then kind of reformed as a hurricane. And the significance of this is kind of showing us where that MJO is moving. It's moving in an eastward fashion, enhancing the upward motion in this part of the Pacific Ocean, and that will move into the Atlantic Basin in about a week to 10 days or so. So again, this is kind of a sign of things to come in the Gulf of Mexico, in the Caribbean Sea. In other words, upward motion will lead to a resurgence of tropical activity in those Atlantic Basin areas as we turn into the month of November. Well, here's another kind of a map to look at what I'm talking about in terms of the enhanced upward motion that's coming back to the Atlantic Basin in a week to 10 days or so. What we're looking at here is way up in the top of the atmosphere, 200 millibar level. This is upper level forecast map from an ensemble run of the European model, and it covers this current 5-day period of October 22nd to the 27th. Basically where you see browns, that's where there's convergence in the upper part of the atmosphere, and where you see greens, that's divergence in the upper part of the atmosphere. So right now you have convergence right over the Atlantic Basin regions of the Gulf of Mexico, Caribbean Sea, and by convergence I mean an area like this where the winds are blowing together in this fashion right here. This is an area of convergence in the upper part of the atmosphere where winds are coming together, and that leads to divergence down the lower parts of the atmosphere. Downward motion overall right now. Now, take a look at how this changes a week or so out. And here we go. All the greens shift from the Pacific Ocean, where Hurricane Christy exists right now, over into the Atlantic Basin here. This is now encompassing that period November 1st to November 6th. So we have quite a change here from, let's show you again, from this right here currently to this in a week to 10 days or so. And this increases to upward motion over places like the Caribbean Sea, and in fact you can see the divergence when winds are blowing apart in the upper part of the atmosphere, as is the case right here. This is an area of divergence aloft over the Caribbean Sea, leading to convergence down at the lower levels. Convergence in lower levels, divergence aloft leads to overall upward motion, and this is the area to look at when we get into the early and perhaps even the middle part of the month of November. So again, all related to that tropical disturbance that moves on a regular basis from west to east. It will move into a position that should cause a surge in tropical activity here in the very end stage of October, and more than likely the first 10 days or so of November. Well, certainly another parameter I like to look at with respect to the potential of tropical activity are the 500 millibar height anomalies. Whenever I see strong high pressure ridging in the mid and upper levels of the atmosphere this time of year over places like southeastern Canada or even New England, that is a red flag because oftentimes you can get tropical systems undercutting south of that ridge underneath the upper level ridge. And indeed, we have an upper level ridge that will start to intensify over southeastern Canada, northeastern U.S. over coming days. This is a forecast map of 500 millibar height anomalies from last night's ensemble run of the GFS, and it averages out the anomaly over a 5-day period. This is the current 5-day period where you see orange. That represents higher heights to normal, higher pressures to normal. Watch what happens as we move forward in time here. All these oranges shift to the north and east so that by the time we get to the latter part of October into November, and here, for example, is the forecast map for October 31st to November 5th, you have this high pressure ridging that shifts from the southwestern U.S. all the way into the northeastern U.S. as we begin the month of November. This too is sending a red flag in addition to that movement of the MJO with respect to potential of tropical activity. Again, when you have high pressure ridging centered over New England, over southeastern Canada this time of the year, that kind of opens the door to convergence down over the tropics in the lower levels of the atmosphere and tropical systems with the potential of moving westward into the Gulf of Mexico or into the Caribbean Sea. So this too is raising a red flag for the end of October and the beginning of November. Well, finally, we'll wrap up with the surface forecast maps from the conventional run of the GFS last night at 0Z. And later in the forecast loop here, we'll see some activity starting to show up down here over the Caribbean Sea, the Gulf of Mexico. Certainly way too early to be to show any kind of specifics, but the pattern is suggesting we'll have a surge of tropical activity again as we flip the calendar into November. Now, let's move forward here. Still very tri-pattern across much of the nation as we begin the day here on Wednesday going into Thursday. There is, in fact, a frontal system, a cold front that crosses through the mid-Atlantic, the northeast U.S. late tonight, but for the most part, on the dry side, we still have not had a drop of rain in Philadelphia all month long. We go forward another few days, be another frontal system, another cold front coming through the Great Lakes with some showers across the Great Lakes, but they'll probably fall apart by the time that front right here moves into the mid-Atlantic region, right around this area right here. Another frontal passage, let's say going into Friday night, Saturday morning on the dry side. And we'll move forward in time here. It passes through dry right here. Maybe an isolated shower in the southern mid-Atlantic region early Saturday. That pushes on through an even colder air mass, then moves into the mid-Atlantic region for Sunday, Monday time frame. Probably lows not too far from freezing in some of those northern and western suburbs of the I-95 big cities, D.C., Philadelphia, New York City. We're talking late Sunday night going into Monday morning. Again, maybe 33, 34, 35 degrees in some of those northern and western suburbs early Monday morning. Then we'll go quickly ahead of time here of next week. And notice the pattern setting up with high pressure along the eastern seaboard by next Tuesday. This is helping to form a tremendous fetch of air from the southwest to the northeast. That will pump in some very mild air for this time of the year, well above normal, all the way into the Great Lakes, into the southeastern part of Canada. And notice some green starting to show up here, and we'll move forward in time. Again, this is a Tuesday forecast map. Let's go farther out in time. That high pressure at the surface moves off the eastern seaboard. Then we start to see more and more heavier precipitation, blobs showing up here over the Bahamas, even a little bit of a closed isobar here, maybe some kind of a tropical wave. This is all the way out a week from tomorrow. Next Thursday, Halloween day, October 31st, possible first uptick in tropical activity showing up here just east of Florida. And then we'll go forward in time here into early November, and starting to show up here. Again, way too early to get in on the details, but we'll have to watch out. Gulf of Mexico, Caribbean Sea, southwestern Atlantic at the end of next week going into November. This is the forecast map. We're now past 10 days out all the way into November 2nd. Indeed, the 0Z run of the GFS has a tropical system right there in the southern part of the Gulf of Mexico. So quiet in the Atlantic Basin for the next several days, but beginning late next week and going into the first part of November, look for that uptick in tropical activity, even perhaps into the second week of November. That's it for now. For ArcfieldWeather.com, this has been meteorologist Paul Dorian.